You're listening to Teach Me the Bible podcast, where we unpack the meaning of books, passages, and themes from Scripture. Join us each week as Dr. David Klingler walks us through God's Word and teaches the Bible. Each episode has a study guide available in the show notes. This is Teach Me the Bible podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Teach Me the Bible podcast. We are kicking off our chapter by chapter discussion of Genesis. And so last week we looked at kind of an introduction to what Genesis is. We sort of oriented our minds that this is a story written for a specific purpose to a specific audience. And so if you haven't listened to that, we'll urge you to go back and kind of get that introduction, because that's going to be important as we go in here. And but today we're going to pick up in chapter 1 or start this discussion, and we're going to see how the story of the Bible starts, how it sets up the entire narrative backbone, as we've been saying, of the Old Testament. And so kick us off if you can.
Yeah, I'm excited about this because, even when we teach at the seminary, and one of the classes I teach most often is this Genesis to Judges. And so we've got 14 weeks to cover Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, and Judges. And you start to think, well, there's just not enough time.
Right.
I've taught an elective where we have 14 weeks in the book of Genesis. We still don't have enough time. And so, so this, we're going to get to detail it out a little more. And so we're going to try to balance between giving you all the detail and not getting bogged down and losing your interest in the detail. But I think in chapter 1, there's just a lot here. So,
there really is.
So let's jump in. So it begins, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And boy, that's a verse that we all know. And we're going to talk a little bit about Hebrew terms here, and we're not going to make it too complicated, but so that you can track it, right? So the text says, in the beginning, God created the heavens, that's the Shemayim, and the earth, Haaretz, the earth, okay? Now, when we consider that statement, and then we look at it in chapter 1, look down to verse 8, okay? In verse 8, verse 7, God made an expanse. Verse 6, let us make an expanse. There was an expanse, verse 7, and he called the expanse Shemayim. It's the same word, okay? And so verses 6 through 8 is God creating Hashemayim, the heavens, which means they weren't created in verse 1.
Yeah, so did he create it in 1? Did he create it in 8?
And so verse 1 is and it actually is it's pretty straightforward in the Hebrew syntax. In the beginning, God, it's like the title. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. Okay, let me tell you I did it.
Yeah.
Okay, now.
It's like a chapter title in a way, yeah.
Verse 2, this ought to read now or something like that. It's we call this in Hebrew a disjunctive clause, and I kind of color code this, right? I've got yellow is my introductory statement, then red.
Right.
So when we're talking about and we'll talk about this quite a bit, disjunctive clause, and you're going to go, holy smokes, we're talking about disjunctive.
I told you,
talking about grammar and syntax. But this is where the narrator says, okay. Let me explain something. Now the earth was formless and void. That's another verse that we just, in the beginning, God created the heavens, and the earth was formless, void, dark, something. We just quote it and just keeps going. I like how the LX, the Septuagint, the Greek texts say this, that the earth was invisible, and you couldn't see it, and it was not yet made. Well, if it's not yet made, you can't see it, right? In other words, it wasn't visible and it had not yet been formed, okay? It was formless, hadn't been formed, and void. It wasn't there, okay? So in the beginning, right? So in the beginning, God, now the earth wasn't there yet,
right?
Because it hadn't yet appeared and hadn't yet been formed. Now, we're going to get to the earth appearing and being formed a little bit later in this chapter, right? And so when we get down to verse 10, God called the dry land 𝐟𝐸𝐽.
Yeah.
There's our word, right?
And so notice that I think that's really interesting that in verse 10, earth is not water and land.
Nope.
Earth is just the dry land.
Just the dry land.
So he's talking about the same thing up in 1 and 2.
Yeah. So this isn't talking about God created
the globe,
the galaxies and the planet in verse 1. That's not what it's saying.
Right.
That was already there, or at least the planet was there. Right. We're going to have the stars and all this stuff, but there was stuff that was there before the story began. There was a history before this is the beginning of God's action to create the heavens.
Boy, that's interesting.
And the land.
Yeah. There's a lot of implications there that we don't need to get into, but so you say, well, how old is look, this is the Shemayim v'ha'aretz, the heavens and the dry land,
the sky,
right?
The blue expanse,
the expanse,
where the rain comes from, and the dry land, Texas.
You don't even need to know Hebrew to see that. I mean, even in English, it interprets it for you.
Well, we just want to make sure that you're seeing, because it's very clear that this word's very clear. Okay, and so. The 𝐟𝐸𝐽, the land, was not, and that word for earth there is the word that's going to be used all through this story, this narrative, Genesis, Exodus, for Israel, for the land of Israel, the land, okay? And so the land had not yet been formed and wasn't yet there, and darkness was on the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the face of the waters. And so the waters are already there. That's the word mayim, the waters, and going to call the waters yom, the sea, right? And so the waters are already there,
and darkness is already
there. Yeah, and so God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and God saw that the light was good. Now, this is the first time that this God saw that something was good is going to appear in this story. Now, we don't know it's a big deal yet. I'm going to tell you it's a big deal.
Right.
Okay. But if this is the first time you've ever read it, it's like watching the first scene of a movie. So what we're going to do is we're going to alert you, say, pay attention to that, because we're going to see this later. Okay.
Right.
So this is like the narrating the movie. Okay. We're reading and we're going to tell you, you need to pay attention to this because this is coming later. So, be paying attention. So God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light yom, day, but the darkness. This is one of those contrastive, disjunctive clauses. But the darkness he called night. Now, if I'm reading this, and I'm looking at this Hebrew grammatical construction, I'm saying, I'm keeping an eye on that darkness.
That's emphasized.
At the end of the story, over there in Revelation 21, 22, new heavens, there is no darkness and there is no sea, right? And both of those are going to be alerted to keep your eyes on here all the way at the beginning of the story. So is there a big A author that's superintending all this? You bet there is. Moses is writing this. I don't know what Moses put the disjunctive clause in there, but the big A author knows exactly where this thing's headed. And maybe Moses does too, right? Moses certainly knows a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he was with the Lord there for quite a while up there on the mountain. Anyway, and so God called the light day, but the darkness he called night, and there was evening and there was morning, Yom Echad, day one. Day one. Then God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, the mayim, right? That's the face of the waters that was introduced back in verse 2. So let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters to separate the waters from the waters. So the waters which were below from the waters which were above. So we're talking about the waters that is going to be the sea, and the waters above, which is going to be the Shemayim, the where the water from above comes, right? The sky. So God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. And God called the expanse Shemayim. right? That he made the heavens and the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, day 2. So now we have light and darkness, and we've got water and the sky. Then God said, let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place. The word there for gathered is 𝐃𝐨𝐬. It's mikvah is a word that you may hear in, when you go to Israel, you walking into the temple, it's a mikvah. It's a place where water is gathered. It's a bath, right?
Yeah, it's a pool.
And so the waters below the heavens may be gathered into one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, but the gathering of the waters he called sea.
There's that but again.
There's that contrastive, disjunctive clause, right? So keep your eye on the sea and keep your eye on the darkness, right?
Which is interesting. Both of those were there before this thing started. I'm not
That's
sure
right.
the implications of that, but
Well,
that's interesting.
in other words, I think there are good implications. In other words, this is why we're not going back to the beginning. We're going forward to the end. See, in the beginning, there was darkness, there was sea. At the end, there is no darkness, there is no sea, there is no Satan's domain, and that's where what's going to occupy this, right?
Yeah.
Verse
We're picking up in 11.
Verse 11, then God said, let the earth sprout forth vegetation and yielding plants, plants yielding seed, fruit trees on the land bearing fruit after their kind, with seed in them. Now, I've thought quite a bit about this. This language is going to be really interesting. In this story, when we get to chapter 3 and we get to the plot, we get to the problem and the solution, pay attention in this verse to the seed and after their kind, okay? So that just as the plants are going to produce other plants just like them, from seed according to their kind. The animals are going to reproduce according to their kind, according to their kind. All through this chapter, everything is reproducing according to their kind. Then when we get over to chapter 3, you're going to see the seed. There are 2 seeds in this story, the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and they're going to both multiply according to their kind. At least that's the intention. And so this language is interesting. The tree language, the tree and seed, all of it's going to be kind of pulled back together all the way out in passages like Isaiah. But we'll talk about that later. But just heads up. And it was so. Verse 12: the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, trees bearing fruit after their kind within them. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, day 3. Verse 14. Then God said, notice a couple things that are being, you're going to start to see repeated. God said, it was so, and God called. God 𝐾𝐨, he named things. In chapter 2, you're going to see man naming things. So just pay attention, because these are the
story.
In chapter 1, God's going to create the heavens and the earth and the sea. And he's going to fill the heavens and the earth and the sea with animals that are going to reproduce according to their kind. And then at the end of chapter 1, he's going to put man in charge of the animals that fill the heavens and the earth and the sea. And then man's going to name them in chapter 2. So that's just a heads up, right? So just this called stuff that's going on. God called the light day. He called the darkness night. Verse 8. He called the expanse heaven. He called the dry land earth. He called the gathering of the waters sea. All the way through here, you're seeing this repeated language, right? And now you're going to start to see according to their kind, according to their kind, and God saw that it was so. And there was morning, day 3. And God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to govern the day. The word there for govern the day, it's a word that we're going to need to pay attention to in this story. And I've thought a lot about this word. It's the word mashal. They're translating it govern or rule. But in every other Semitic language, the word means to be like. It's the word that is used for Proverbs. These are be-like statements. These are statements that correspond to reality.
They're representative in some way,
Yeah. And so this story is going to be looking for one, just kind of a heads up, who has the character of the Lord, who is like God. He's a be-like one. He is the exact representation of the character of the Father, Hebrews chapter 1. And he's called a mashal. He has the same, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father, Jesus is going to say. So we're looking for one, a be-like one. Man is going to be created to be like God. We're going to see that he's not. He's going to actually reproduce according to his own kind. But the story is for looking for a mashal.
It just so happens he's going to be the ruler. And so I think, is that how that happened? These two words mesh together. The rule gets meshed together with what man was created to do. He was created to radam. We're going to get to this here in just a second. I want to give you a heads up so this is a be-like light that is there's one in the daytime and one in the nighttime. At the end, there's no need for the be-like lights because the true light is shining, right? And so again, you're getting this indication of this language is going to be throughout the whole story. So God made two lights, the greater light to mashal the day and the lesser light to mashal the night. Which light was created in verse 3.
Yes.
And so these are, they're like that light? Is that what's happening?
They're like lights. Now, what we're going to see as we read in the story that light equals life. And so if we were to turn out the sun, just someone go up there and flip the switch, what would happen on Earth? Well, all life would die. The living beings that breathe oxygen, the photosynthesis, the whole process of carbon dioxide change to oxygen, all life would cease. But there's a time coming when the true light, which gives life to every man, is going to come into the world. And he's the one who's going to give light even in the new heavens and new earth. And so all of this story is going to tie together, and we're just in chapter 1 of the story. And so God placed them in the heavens to govern the day and the night, and God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. Then God said, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and let the birds fly in the above the land in the expanse of the heavens. And God created the great sea monster. This is verse 21. This is the Tanim. That Tanim is going to show up in Isaiah. These Tanim, the great Tanim, the twisting Nachash is going to be a particular problem in this story. And it's Satan, right? And so God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, day 5. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, and cattle and creeping things and beasts of the field after their kind. So in other words, cows are reproducing cows and pigs are reproducing pigs. And so, you're going to be hard-pressed to get some kind of a, evolutionary switching of, species and all that stuff, right? Because they're multiplying. Now, why is it after their kind so important? Because there's going to be an interesting switch that's coming here in just a couple verses. So God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, the cattle after their kind, everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. And God saw that it was good. God saw that it was good. God saw that it was good. God saw that it was good all the way through this chapter. where this story is headed is Satan's going to entice Adam and Eve, and they're going to make determination for their own of what's good and evil. They're going to begin to operate according to what they think is good. The woman saw that it was good, and she took and she ate. Right. Yeah, and so
you ought to be thinking, this isn't right.
Yes,
the Lord's the one who sees.
So the Lord is the one who makes sole determination of good and evil, right and wrong, beauty and ugly. The word here is tov, good. It's translated good or even beautiful, right? And so we will hear things like, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Well, is it good because you say so, or is it good because God says so, right?
Well, there's the problem.
Is it good because it's right in your eyes, or it's good because it's right in the eyes of the Lord? There was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. See, in Deuteronomy chapter 14, we're not to do what every man is doing here today, what's good in your own eyes. We're to do what's good in the eyes, or right in your own eyes. We're to do what's good in the eyes of the Lord. This is the language of the story, okay? And so when Paul says, we walk by faith and not by sight, you're not to walk by what's good and right in your own eyes. You're to walk by the revelation of what's good and right in the eyes of the Lord. Okay, and so we're kind of giving you a heads up.
So in other words, don't just gloss over this chapter.
Oh gosh,
because this language sets up the story. I mean, it's so important. Like you were saying, he called and he named and he saw that it was good. That
every word in the beginning of a story. In the problem, in the plot, the conflict of it's all just loaded with importance, right? So verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule. There's our radah. Now, in the Hebrew, and I think that I'm going to say it here. I think that that we have translated this, let them rule over the birds, the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky. Actually, that's not the word for over. Over would in Hebrew would be a different word, be all. That this is a bait. Let them rule among, in, with, among, by. Let them rule among the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, and among all the earth, and among all the creeping things that creeps in the earth, right? I think we have the wrong view of rule, and we're going to run into this as we continue in the story. Satan's view of rule is to rule over, to dominate. When Israel's going to ask for a king, Samuel says, "You're going to get you want a king like the nations? You'll get one like the nations. He will he will subject your children. They will serve him. They will build his buildings. He won't serve you. You'll serve him." Right? Rule and bless are going to go together in this story. Rule among, in the midst of the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, the beasts of the field. Right? Not over. And so the way that God rules is at his expense for the benefit of those who were in his care. That's how Christ does it. That's how the king of Israel was to do it. Not to rule over, subjugate, suppress, but to bless, right, at the expense of the ruler, sacrificial. Yeah. And so I think we need to get our categories straight. That's pretty important. Right here. And so man was created to in the image of God. And then, so verse 27, God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Now, let me go back to verse 26. One more thing that's going to be important for us going forward. It seems like every verse is important. Like it is. Let us make Adam in our image according to our likeness. Every time, and I'll alert you when it's not, but every time we read a man, it's the word Adam. And I'll try to emphasize that all the way through because there's some really important things that are coming in chapter 3, end of chapter 2 and into chapter 3, where there's a new word introduced, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So let us make Adam in our image according to our likeness, and let them rule over the or in the midst of the fish of the sea, and in the among the birds of the sky, and among the cattle, and among all the earth, and among the creeping things that creep on the earth. And God created Adam in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them, right? And so to let them rule, it's Adam, one man, one woman, one flesh, right? And let them rule in the midst of, okay? So he created them. And he blessed them, and he said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, to bring it under your care, and to, again, this is a radah, to rule among the fish and among the birds and among every living thing. Now, so don't miss this, that the animals were to multiply according to their kind. They were multiplying, fish produced fish and cattle produced cattle. Man was to multiply according to God's kind, according to his image, according to his likeness. They were to be like ones, okay? And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that's on the face of the eretz, the land, and every tree which has its fruit yielding a seed shall be food for you, and every beast of the earth, and every bird of the sky, and everything that moves on the earth which has life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. And God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, day 6. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all of their hosts. The host, that's our first time that we're introduced with Savaot, the host, the armies, going to be equated with stars. By the seventh day, God completed all of his work, by the seventh day he had Shabbat, he had Sabbathed, right? He had completed, he had Sabbathed from all of his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all of his work, that all that he had done. And God blessed the seventh day, and he set it apart, because he had rested from all of his work which he had created and had made. And so that's the end of scene 1. Okay, and so next time when we begin, we're going to pick it up with chapter 2, verse 4, right? And we're going to be introduced to this word that we're going to translate it account or generations or something like that, but it's the Toledot, and we'll be introduced to the Toledot, and so we'll explain that next time.
Yeah, so we're starting a new scene next time, but all the language carries forward.
Yes.
So pay attention to that language, keep it with you for next week, and we're going to pick up chapter 2 next time. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to Teach Me the Bible podcast. Our desire is to use the power of God's Word to change lives. For more information, download our app. Join us next week for another episode of Teach Me the Bible.